honestly, there is nothing more important to spend your money on than healing, and especially as a mother, because you're just going to impart those wounds on your children.
Hey friend, you are listening to The Discerning Mother. This is for the woman of faith who wants to feel calm, grounded, and whole again without pretending that everything is fine. In these episodes, you will learn to understand your body, your nervous system, and the stories that you carry so you can become the woman that God had in mind. All right, let's dive in. All right, welcome back, everyone. Today, I am here with Emanuela. So excited for this conversation. Emanuela was a client of mine a while ago now, right?
I think it was 2024.
Yeah, so it's been it was right after my little one was born. Okay, so welcome, Emanuela, and can you just tell us a little bit about yourself, about your family, and you have a business? I just want to hear all the things.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me. I'm always excited to chat with you, so this is a bonus for me. I am a wife, a mom of 3 boys who I homeschool. They're 10, 7, and 3. And yes, I run an online business, although I'm currently kind of in a season of pausing and kind of, I guess, reorienting myself. So I'm still working with some clients, have kind of pulled back on forward-facing marketing. My husband also is an entrepreneur, and so but his business is outside contracting kind of work. So yeah, I've been in online business for 5 years. Before that, I ran an in-person business, and what I do is I coach entrepreneurs and leaders on how to become captivating speakers, whether that's online, in the boardroom, on stages, so that they can tell their story and make more impact in the world. I love helping them to discover their story and then also using their voices optimally. So my background's in musical theater, so I use a lot of voice training, body work. I used to be a yoga instructor before my conversion, and so I bring in a lot of breath work and body work and nervous system stuff as well, so that people can really feel safe before they speak and share. And that's a bit about me.
Yeah, love it. Okay, and so you are not in the States, you're in Canada, but you're basically, it's right over. Okay. But you do spend time in Florida every year, right?
My parents have a place in St. Pete's, which is awesome because we get to go down and use the amenities and see the beach. And we are always kind of open to potentially spending more time there, maybe moving there. It's, it's a bit different when you're from Canada because you have to obviously get a visa and all of that. So, but we always have dreams of potentially moving down there at some point.
So again, you reached out to me in 2021, and then we ended up working together whenever he was like a baby. And so when we first started working together, what was going on in your life that made you really decide now's the time to reach out?
Yeah, I had my 3rd boy in February of 2023. He actually just turned 3 on Sunday, which is crazy to me. And this was post-conversion, we're going to give our fertility to God and see what happens. But my first 2 boys, who were 3 years apart, I ended up with C-sections with both of them. I wanted to have very natural births, went with midwives, ended up with C-sections twice. And then this 3rd time I was still okay, I don't care, I'm going to have a VBAC, and didn't end up going that way. I was very, very pregnant for a very, very long time. 45 weeks is what I think I counted. So anyone listening who's 37 weeks and you're I just feel like I've been pregnant forever, just don't even. So it was a long time. And then had the baby. He was a big boy. He was 9, 12. And then I ended up having a lot of trouble breastfeeding, just like I did with my first 2. They were all tongue-tied. And every time I wanted to be able to breastfeed. That was always a goal for at least a year. My first, I think I gave up around 5 months. Because I just, again, things change. I was just talking about this with my osteopath, and there's just more and more resources as the years go on. But 10 years ago, okay, you got to pump, you get the tongue tie clipped, and then you kind of just got to keep pumping and keep trying and keep going. I didn't know about all these other modalities and things that could help with breastfeeding. So I felt like I was going mentally crazy by 5.5 months. That's actually what the play I wrote is based on, was kind of that whole experience of just putting so much pressure on myself. I have to breastfeed, and anything less than that is just not good enough. And I already failed at having the baby naturally, so now I'm going to fail at this too. And it's just so much pressure. Then my second one, I ended up going for over a year. So that was great, but always kind of mixing a little bit of formula as well, which is totally fine. Like if anyone's listening and this is not a judgment on formula feeding in any way. Just for me personally, I wanted to really try and do it. So then with my third, I was like, how am I down this same road again? 5 years later, it felt like the same scenario all over again. But the only difference was my third C-section, I ended up having a postpartum hemorrhage. So that was pretty traumatic. I felt like at the time, didn't really know what was happening. I left the hospital with a very low hemoglobin count. So I was, that was obviously disorienting. That didn't help with milk supply, but I had a very good community my best friend was a doula at the time, and my husband was around to help, my mom, like lots of people taking care of us. So we pulled through, and I got a lot of osteopathy for the baby. We got the tongue tie clipped. I just ended up breastfeeding him until last April. So 26 months, which was crazy to me.
That's amazing.
Yeah. I thought I would just stop, but then I was like, hey, I worked this hard. Let's just keep going. And then eventually after he was 2, I was like, okay, it feels time. So it was kind of just natural. It was a natural progression for us. He just one day didn't ask for it and I didn't offer. And then that was that. But within that.
Yeah, that's always,
sorry.
Too. That's always kind of sad too, whenever it's like, they just stop. And like, there's not this monumental like moment. It just is like over, right? I don't know if that's how you feel about it too, but that's sort of how mine have all been.
It is definitely a milestone that I don't think we talk about enough, because you talk about like trying to breastfeed and starting breastfeeding, but you don't talk about all the changes that happen after. So, and not to go too far off topic, but I just started seeing an osteopath again about 2 months ago. And she said, well, when did you stop breastfeeding? And I was like, we're recording this in February. I stopped breastfeeding in April of last year. She's like, oh, so you still have it takes even longer. I didn't realize that the elastin was still running through my body, because I'm very hypermobile, which causes a lot of joint issues as well. And then with the breastfeeding and the elastin, I didn't realize that was still a thing. So I was like, oh, I feel like I stopped breastfeeding forever ago. She's like, nope, you've still got those loose joints. So I reached out to you to answer your question, because after I kind of passed that 1 year, I always say the first year is kind of like a blur. You're just kind of trying to get to the finish line, get this baby fed, get him grown. It was always my mental health, because of the curves that these babies have to be on, always derailed me. I would see my naturopath and she's like, he looks great. He looks healthy. And I'm like, yeah, but he's not following the curve. They can really, he was born, I found this out after the fact. My doctor said he was born in the 90th percentile, and he was basically in the 4th percentile for most of the time. So if you're someone who likes charts and cares about that stuff, that obviously doesn't sound so great, but I was trying to not let that, spiral me. So after the first year, so now we're in 2024, I still felt I just had a lot of resentment towards how I was treated also in the hospital and other things that were said to me. And I felt like I was not fully able to let it go. And so when I saw you and I saw the work that you were doing, I thought, well, this might help us to just kind of close that story, close that loop, kind of make peace with everything that transpired, not just in that birth, but in all the births, because they all kind of the story kind of kept playing over and over and over for me in each birth. And it made me feel like I'm not equipped to do this. Why is it so easy for other people? A lot of that comparison, seeing other moms just being able to, birth their baby and breastfeed. And it's so easy because of course we don't see everything, right? And just, I knew that was kind of holding me back mentally and emotionally. So that's why I reached out to you.
So thank you for sharing all of that. And I would love if you could tell us a little bit more about your play, because I think that this is a really big thing for you, especially around the journey of breastfeeding. But I remember whenever we talked, there was even more to it than just that. And if you want, we can link it in the show notes if anybody wants to take a look at it. But if you can just tell us a little bit more about your play, I think that'd be awesome.
Yeah. So like I said, I had my first boy, that was 2015. So he's a big boy now. And then had my second boy 3 years later in 2018. And At that time, so I will say, like, my mother-in-law was passing away. She passed away 6 months after my second child was born, and she was a big help in our life. And I felt, again, like every time postpartum was just really, I felt like not myself, like just felt lonely, felt like it was just so much work and so hard. And then she passes away, and I'm like, I don't think I'm okay. So I was like I remember I called a therapist, and she's like, well, you sound fine to me. And I'm like, I don't feel fine. Yeah, I was like, just because I can articulate my thoughts doesn't mean I'm doing okay.
Yeah.
So then she used to be a yoga teacher of mine, and she started coaching, and she was on Instagram. She did this like 30-day creativity challenge. So at that time, I was still working with older adults. I was running performing arts programs with them. So I'd spent like a decade at this point doing drama and music and dance. And before my first child was born, I was still acting myself. But I realized, like, oh my gosh, I'm helping other people tell their stories and do these performances, these seniors, which was awesome. But I wasn't really doing anything myself for me. Like, I hadn't been to a dance class in years, I hadn't done a lot. So I had written my whole birth story with my first boy down just as like a PDF. Like, I just wrote it all out. Well, this happened, then this happened, then this happened, just for myself. And I was like, what would happen if I took that and turned it into a one-woman play? Because I just had this idea. So I did. And then there was a couple play festivals that were accepting submissions that year. So I submitted it, and they got chosen. It got chosen twice. So I was like, oh, okay, I guess I have to do this now. And it was a really great experience because it kind of reignited that passion for me. And I also realized how healing it really is to tell our stories. And I had a lot of moms come to see it because it was only 20 minutes. It was like a short play. And they said, it was great. They could come between feeds, and a lot of women really resonated with the story. So it was basically just like exactly what I said, like me kind of wondering why I can't do this, why everybody else can. I didn't feel very connected to my first boy because I felt like, it was a whole new world for me, like it is for everybody when you have your first child. And that made me feel guilty too, because people would say to me like, oh, don't you just, like, as soon as the baby's here, you're just filled with love? And it's like, I don't know, this just feels like a lot of work. I didn't know it hit me. I did not realize I would just be up all the time, pumping all the time, feeding all the time. And then there was, that added pressure of like, well, I can't just stop. I can't not feed him. I can't just buy formula. I can't do that. Like, all of this pressure, and then the charts and all of that. So my play was really about that. And at the end, it kind of ends with my husband saying like, you don't have to do this. And I was like, and I, at that time, again, given what I knew and my capacity, like, for me, the choice was to stop feeding him because I wasn't able to enjoy anything, any part of it, because I was so hyper focused on producing enough milk and doing everything perfectly that I just feel like the first 6 months of his life, I wasn't there. Like, I wasn't present. I wasn't like, oh, he's doing this and oh, I was just like constantly worried that he wasn't growing or that it wasn't enough. I wanted to write this play that I wish I knew that other people felt this way, because the stories I saw around me and the things I heard were, like, oh, you have a vaginal birth if you want it. And this is, you just make that choice and you have a birth plan, and then it goes the way you plan, and it didn't go the way I planned. So what happens to the people who it doesn't go the way you plan? And so I wanted to write that play, and I did. And it's on YouTube now. That was 2019. I will say some of my views since then have changed a lot. I think part of it for me, we could go down a whole other rabbit hole here, but was just like I didn't really want my life to change. I was a cradle Catholic, but I wasn't really a person of faith, really a practicing person of faith at that point. So my life was really centered around myself. I wanted to have all this success and keep going with my career. And I felt like also the baby was like taking me away from that. So I think sometimes I look at my plate now and I kind of cringe, like, ooh, this is not a good look. But I have to just honor who I was at that point in time.
Yes, for sure. And definitely check it out because it is really relatable. Like, even if you've had a great nursing experience, it's still hard. And like, you definitely go through all of that hard in such a beautiful way. And I mean, this is what you do, but like, that storytelling is so important for us. And so I love that you like brought in like the play in order to like tell your story, because it just makes it so memorable and relatable. And I just love it. Okay. So let's dive in a little bit here with like us working together specifically. So before we work together, I'm curious how the stress or like pressure of everything that you were going through was showing up for you in terms of like your relationships with your husband, with your kids, with your friends, even maybe in business. Like, yeah, tell me all about that.
Yeah, I don't think I was a very present mom for my other two kids because in the back of it was like that low level anxiety just all day long, all the time because of the trauma that had happened from the birth. And I thought after a year, it would just, time heals. You just forget. I still, like, even now, I still sometimes look at him. I'm like, is he too small? And I just don't weigh him now because there was just so much pressure on that I'm like, you know what? If that's going to stress me out, I'm just not going to weigh him. Like, he's growing, he's talking, he's doing all the things, he's fine. And now I see too, like, that's just how my babies grow. They were all kind of the same in that regard. But I wasn't able to I was homeschooling, but I feel like I was just barking at them and not able to really be present because everything was about the baby. And honestly, like it felt like a really dark time for me. When I think back to like hard times, it was that postpartum with my third child. I would think to myself, is he even gonna be two? Is he like, that's how dark my head would go. Like, we're not, like, one of us is going to die. Something bad's going to happen. We're not going to get there. And that's why even celebrating his third birthday was such a celebration for me, because this was the time I prayed for. Like, this was the time in those moments. I would just try and think, okay, one day he's going to be a toddler. That'll happen. Like, he's going to be a toddler one day. We're not going to be here forever. But it was a lot of like sleepless nights just crying to Jesus, like, are you here? What is happening? And then because of that, obviously, then you can't be present with your kids, with your other children, because you're tired and you're wired and you're just constantly in my brain all the time in my head. I did take some time off of work the year that he was born, and then kind of jumped right back in the next year. And I don't know if it affected me in that regard. Definitely marriage, when you're postpartum, you're not really wanting to be intimate a lot. So I'm sure it affected us in those domains. It was very much just like, let's just get through this. Let's just get through this.
Yeah, I love what you said about like time would heal all wounds. I hear that all the time from people. And unfortunately, like, it's just not necessarily true. And I give the example, let's say you break your leg and you don't get it set properly. It's going to heal for sure, but it's going to heal in a way that probably isn't aligned. And what that means is not only is your leg going to have those, like, the pain and like everything that's associated with that, but then that trickles down to your foot. Like, how is your foot holding up? How is your hip holding up? How's your back? Like, that one injury, if you don't intentionally heal it properly, affects everything else. Even if it doesn't seem like your broken leg could affect your neck. Again, if we're not in that proper alignment, then it is. And so I love that.
Yeah, and I think we think we're healed because our day in and day out, we're not thinking about it. But not thinking about it doesn't mean you're actually healed, because then something will happen and it'll trigger that, and you won't even know, why am I reacting like this? Why is this happening? And it's until you start doing that deep inner work that you're like, yes, I'm not actually healed. Like, and then working with you, when you would have me kind of retell the story and I would say it, and I was like, oh, I am not. It was actually a friend. So I think I worked with you that summer, but I met with a friend who wasn't really present for the birth postpartum. And then I met with her maybe 8 months later, and I was telling her the whole story, and she's looking at me and she's like, you don't seem like you can tell this story. And I realized, no, I can't tell this story. It's too hard to say it out loud.
Yeah. And that's one of the big things, that you know that you're healed from it whenever you can tell the story and it doesn't make you want to cry or want to punch or like get super angry. And so like that sort of is the threshold, is it's like, we can't change that it happened to us because it happened, but we can change how our body perceives what happened. And so again, whenever you get to the point, like if anybody listening is like, I think I'm still really angry about this, it doesn't have to be birth specific. It could be anything. You almost want to think about it like you're telling your kid the same bedtime story over and over again, where it's like, you still like love doing it, like you appreciate it, but it kind of just doesn't necessarily have that same emotional tie behind it. It's just like this neutral thing.
Yeah. It doesn't mean that it's didn't happen. I'm learning about that too, Brigid. Like, it's like, it doesn't invalidate your trauma or whatever you went through in any way. But if you can say it, if you can almost laugh, like I heard someone say, even trauma with her parents, like from childhood, she's like, it's still bad. It still sucks that it happened. But I can kind of laugh she was talking about how her dad would get mad when she'd come home late and he would be like very angry. She's like, but now I kind of laugh, like my dad would sit there by the window waiting for me. Like, it's so silly, you know? So if you get to that point where you can laugh about it, or even just be like, yeah, that's what happened. That's the story. Like kind of how I just said it to you, but you know, like me saying this a year and a half ago was not the same, not the same at all.
Yes, for sure. Yeah. So if you're right, if you're in that story, that place right now, we're telling your story, whether it's again around birth or anything, even like childhood things or relationships with your parents, whatever it is, like if you're at that point where it feels really hard, like that means that there's some work that needs to be done. And like it needs to be done because it's affecting every other area of your life. Okay. So you talked about how like you realized by working together, you realized there were things underneath that were deeper than the birth. And I know we talked about this, and I don't want to get too personal with it, but we talked about this especially in terms of like your parents and your siblings and things that happened with them. And maybe you were like, oh, I didn't realize that this could be still affecting me. So can you tell me a little bit more about any of that sort of thing?
My mother's birth stories, because she has quite a lot of stories as well. She only had 3 of us living, but 2 did not make it. And then me specifically, I'm fine to share this. She was told by 3 specialists to abort me. So she says, and I was her last baby, and she would always say, like, you were my easiest pregnancy physically, but mentally, like, I was not okay. And now kind of even unpacking how generational trauma can happen, realizing like I was told I wasn't worth living here by 3 people. And my mom, even though she didn't believe that, I'm sure there was a lot of fear in her of like, what is her life going to look like? And if I have a special needs child, how is our family going to, I mean, I can just imagine, because I'm a mom too, you know, all the thoughts that might be coming up if somebody told you over and over that this was going to happen. And then thanks be to God, I am healthy. But who knows if I was carrying that wound. And then all the stories of her pregnancies as well, which I did not think about. I didn't think that I was thinking about it, right? But again, sometimes those stories just live with us, and we can our psyche does try to block some stories to keep us safe. Purpose, right? Yeah. So who knows how that played into it all. My mom is an immigrant, so she told me with her first child, who ended up being stillborn, she said somebody told her when she goes to the hospital not to complain because they won't help you. And because she didn't speak the language well, she didn't say anything. But she says she feels, whether or not this is, you know, physiologically accurate, we will never know. But she felt like she was ready or in labor, ready, needed help, and no one helped her. So interesting stuff to kind of dig into that I didn't think about until you kind of asked me those questions.
Yeah. And it's things too, where it's, again, until we are very intentional about breaking those generational, the trauma and like whatever else, the generational sins, they're just going to keep coming back up. And it's not like you're just going to pass it on to your child. Like, just like, right, like I'm done, here, child, you take care of it. Like, right. No, it's like, you have be so intentional about it, because it's so easy to pass along those things. And not because like our parents have done anything wrong, but just because they might not have had this awareness what was going on. And they might not have had the gift of the faith to understand what was happening. And so I'm curious if you can speak about like how God's role in this healing for you, because again, that's one of the biggest this is the cornerstone of everything, is like God is the ultimate healer. And so I'm just curious how it was to bring him into your healing journey and how he keeps showing up for you, even now.
Yeah. Common theme I think that I've learned just in this work with you and just healing in general is my need to be in control, feel like I'm in control, micromanage my family, micromanage everything, and be like, oh yeah, if I just plan everything and organize and everything. And I think birth is all about letting go. That's what maybe blocked me in a lot of ways, because I was trying so hard to control it, and when I had to really just like surrender it all. So when I worked with you, there's 2 times that really stick out. One was the exercise of kind of imagining where Jesus was in your birth in that story. And now I can't unsee that. Like I see him in the operating room, kind of managing the whole thing. And I did feel him even before I worked with you, like after the hemorrhage, I felt like he was in the room. And then recently, when you and I worked together again, this was more around like my fears of getting pregnant again. It really like just talking to him, these like meditations that you do where it's like, hey, bring in Jesus or bring in God or whoever you feel like is you need to talk to, and then talk to them. And it really like I really feel like healed. I know that sounds so dramatic, but I feel so much lighter from that because I remember like he's carrying it. I think that's the common theme with birth, with healing, with everything is like we have to just trust and surrender and like let God do the work. Because if we're trying so hard to hold on and hold all the pieces together, white knuckle it all, he doesn't have room to work in us. And that is really hard. I'm not saying that's easy at all, especially in the world we live in where people always ask you like, was it planned? Are you planning to have more? Is this, as a person of faith, you're kind of like, well, I mean, kind of, but like at the end of the day, it's not my plan. And that can be really hard because you do want to plan your life. You do want to like know what's coming. But birth and children, it's like the one thing that we don't know how it's going to go.
Yeah, I love that. That's so beautiful. And I love that you brought up too that like we worked together a while ago and then now again, because I think a lot of people can get in their head that like healing's this one-time thing. And it's just this linear thing where it's like, all right, you do the work and it's done. When in reality, it's like, no, it's a constant thing that you're doing. And you have to be so intentional about it. And this will be healed, but then something else will pop up because again, we're fallen people in a fallen world. And the devil's always doing things to try to get us away from God because ultimately there's two roads. There's the road that leads to God and there's the road that leads to hell. And that's like a hard thing to hear, but like that's the truth. There's no middle ground. And so again, I love that you brought that up because I think, again, a lot of women just think it's like a one and done when in reality it's like you have to be super intentional about it. And you are super intentional about it, which is why you're seeing big changes, which I love.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating to me, especially here in Canada, like our healthcare is covered if you want to just, go get your checkup from your doctor or go to the dentist. Well, the dentist isn't covered unless you're a child. But point is, people will regularly do those kind of things, right? Those screenings. But yet we won't have our regular checkup for, our coach or a therapist or like those kind of holistic things, which to me is even more foundational because a lot of times if you can heal those things, then your physical body and everything else can heal too because it starts to feel safe and can like actually relax. We say in our culture like stress is the leading cause of illness, but it's not necessarily the stress. It's like the thoughts around the stress. Like if we can handle the stress, then we're okay. Yeah.
Exactly. Yes. Our bodies are made to handle stress, right? It's just like our immune system where it's like, it's not good if we live in this like vacuum. Like we need to have that like push and pull, but it's that capacity of like, do we have the capacity to move from that stress, like that flux of like in and out easily? And unfortunately, a lot of people don't. And that's why getting support with it can be so transformative.
Yeah. And we want quick results too. I was just talking about this with my osteo because if you've ever been to osteo, sometimes you're like, what is even happening? You're just pushing me, I want like a deep massage or I want you to crack my back. But I know that again is my like I want instant gratification. I want to feel that euphoric, but I have to remember, and a friend reminded me, she's like, that this is 42 years of your body being in this state. And now it's it needs time. Like it needs many repetitions, but our culture is like, give me the pill, give me I can go to this. I can have coaching for one session and I'll be totally good. Like did it, talked about it, done. No, it's just like our prayer life. We just continue to journal, continue to find more modalities and things that can support us and continue to heal and unpack. It's honestly like an onion. It's almost scary because you think I'm just going to like unpack this thing. And then you start unpacking and you're like, oh, wait, I got to go deeper. Oh, I got to go deeper. Oh, okay. And suddenly you're like, wow, there's a lot there.
And that's so true. But again, it's like this lifelong process. And it's so necessary because ultimately, like, that's our path to sainthood is by doing this work now so that we can get to the root of like why we have this pride, why we have lack of humility, like all of these different things. So all of these experiences, as hard as they are truly God's like gift to us. And that sounds terrible to say that sometimes, but it's like because they allow us to grow closer to him. right? So
I
it's like,
never
yeah,
thought, I
it's
never
hard.
thought I would feel that way about what I went through with my births. And honestly, I can honestly, like, I'm shocked. And it sounds, and if you're in that place where you don't feel that anymore, like, I get that because they hear people say, like, I'm grateful for my suffering. I'm like, yeah, that's just what Catholic people say. They don't like, but no, you can actually get to that place because you see, like, I wouldn't be who I am without it. Like, it's not that God
Exactly.
wants us to suffer, but that's just how we kind of, because when times are great, people don't always turn to God, right? Sometimes you need to remember those times.
Yeah, so beautifully said. So I guess can you expand a little bit on like the big you just mentioned a big one, which is like that you see it as a gift now, but can you expand what are some of the big differences that you notice in yourself or relationships now versus whenever we
Mhm.
first started working together?
Well, the big one for me is not being afraid of getting pregnant again. I think that's a big thing. I mean, I'm sure if the Lord blesses us with another pregnancy, I will probably still have to call you and be like, "Hey, walk me through this." But I'm in a much better place than I was even 5 months ago, thinking like, okay, I healed my stories, but that doesn't mean I want to go walk through them again. Like, it doesn't mean I want to do that. And, people who are having lots of babies, obviously they're having easy births because they wouldn't be having this story. So I think that is the biggest thing that I feel like I finally can surrender and just trust. I don't know that I'll do it perfectly. Again, you don't know until you're faced with those scenarios, but I do often think, okay, what if this happened? And I'm like, then that would happen. Like, that was one
Yeah.
big thing you said to me. You're like, okay, let's walk through the what ifs. Let's just keep going. And then what? And then what? And then what? And as I'm saying it out loud to you, I'm like, well, yeah, well, even kind of that worst case, scariest thing that I'm fearing, that would happen. And then God would have it. Like, it always will be okay if you have the Lord.
I love that. So good. And I think too, it's easy for us to say like that you're no longer afraid
Yeah.
of having another baby, but there's so much more than that because like how that shows up with
Mhm.
your husband and shows up with like that physical intimacy, that marital intimacy, how that shows up with like even if your kids ask like, hey, can we have another
Mhm.
sibling, right? Instead of getting so worked up and like snapping at them, you're able to have that conversation with them. And you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. Intimacy
so
for
just,
sure it's different for sure.
yeah. Yeah. So again, if you are in that space of like, well, maybe I only did this one thing, or like I only noticed this one difference, like I want to encourage you to dig deeper. And it's like, no, but what actually else is there? Because there's so much. It's never just one thing. There's always a trickle down. Last question for you is what would you tell someone who maybe wants to get support, whether it's with me or somebody else, but is scared to make the investment or that it won't work or just has really some fears?
I mean, I get that investing is hard. I get that it's 2026. We are all feeling like groceries are expensive, life is expensive. But kind of something my husband and I have always said is like, if we don't have our health, then what does anything else matter? Is there some way, if it's just a financial fear, then again, we have to go back to the scripture of like, the birds don't worry about where they're going to make their nest. Like, if it's just financial, just trust that, like, that God will provide. And I don't mean that in a flighty way, like, don't do anything, it'll be fine. But like, I get that the financial strain that's always something we all consider in 2026. There's a lot. But again, if you don't have your health, if you don't have your mental health, your emotional health, if it's affecting yourself, your ability to enjoy your life, like, you only have one life. So why not try to be the best version of yourself and heal those things? And I promise when those things heal, then the ripple effects, then you will be like, okay, now I can spend money on the kids' new shoes or that activity for my other child. Or, I know as women, we struggle with that, especially if you are a stay-at-home mom. Trust me, I get that. If you're not the primary breadwinner, you're like, well, we have to budget and the kids have to have this activity or that thing. I get it. And I'm a homeschooling family too. And I know, like, things cost a lot. But again, at the end of the day, you are steering the ship of your family. Like, yes, the husband is the head, but the mom is really like leading the ship. We know this, right? You're the manager, you're organizing the schedules, you're probably doing most of the schooling. So you have to invest in your health. And your mental health is first, like your spiritual, mental, emotional health. That will help your physical body. It will. So oftentimes we're like, I got to change my diet. I got to sleep more. Yes, those things can help, but they're still just band-aids. And then
Yeah.
again, I've been there. I've struggled with my weight. Like I'm always like, and I'm the hardcore type A, like gotta do everything perfectly. And now I'm realizing like, maybe if I give myself some grace, see myself how the Lord sees me, and actually love myself, then I won't put all that pressure on myself to do everything perfect, whether it's your diet or whatever. And you can actually heal. You can actually let your body relax and be safe. And so, honestly, there is nothing more important to spend your money on than healing, and especially as a mother, because you're just going to impart those wounds on your children if we don't. Not to guilt trip, because trust me, there have been a lot of thoughts of like, did I mess them up? Is it too late? It's never too late. No matter how old your kids are, you can change and you can be better for them. Just honestly, I hope if you're listening and you're like, I don't know, I'm scared, pray on it, figure it out, and do it.
Yes. Oh, that last part that you said was so beautiful. So good. Okay. Thank you so much for sharing that. So, Emanuela, where can people find you?
I would love you to get in touch with me. You can still go to my website, Emanuela Hall. That's M1L and Emanuela, 2 L's in Hall. EmanuelaHall.com. And I think there's my free elevator pitch on there. So if you jump onto my mailing list, then you will get all of my newsletters, which I still send out every week, updating people on events that I'm doing or offers that I have. I still have a couple courses that are just self-paced, and I'm always open for one-on-one coaching.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. I know that it's going to help so many women who hear it. I mean, you're already helping so many women with your own business and raising those beautiful boys that we were able to meet this was it summer? It's been summer. It was just, it was so fun to be able to meet them, and they're just so beautiful and obviously love their mom so much. So thank you so much.